Welcome everybody to the 2020 Remote Learning Summit hosted by Dyknow. I can see that we've got a lot of people coming in from all over the country. Liz, I'm sorry it's snowing in Colorado. It is April. What's up with that? Liz and I did an episode of Tackling Tech together. We had a lot of fun. Wow. Amazing to see that so many people are from everywhere. This is awesome. So I want to welcome everyone. Welcome to the Remote Learning Summit. I want to thank you for joining out of your busy day. This conversation today is all going to be driven directly from you, the audience members. We received nearly 300 questions on all things remote learning related. And we're going to be taking those questions today and teeing them up for our awesome group of panelists. We're really excited about today. It's going to be a great day of learning. We're doing this conference. It really is stemming from the momentum around the Technology Coaching Conference. If any of you out there attended that, we had 2,500 people sign up. We received such great feedback. Twitter went viral with the hashtag TechCoachCon hashtag, which that is the hashtag we'll be using today. So if you've got something to say or something inspired you, go to Twitter, hashtag TechCoachCon, use it. But we received so much great feedback that we really got together as a team and we said, we need to keep the momentum around this. There's really something here. This is a great platform. People are learning and we want to keep the conversation going. So that's why we're doing Remote Learning Summit. It's definitely top of mind. It is something that we've been talking to a lot of you out there as audience members about what you're doing, the good, bad, and the ugly. And this is just going to be an extension of all of that. With that being said, Tira, if you go to the next slide, we've been having a lot of the conversations regarding remote learning on Tackling Tech. Tackling Tech is a podcast that we launched right after the Technology Coaching Conference. We wanted to create a place where we could create a platform where we could bring together educators to talk about the things that really mattered regarding communication, collaboration, how to integrate technology in their schools and districts. As we launched, COVID-19 happened and the conversation changed and we started talking about things like remote learning. How are we doing? How are teachers doing? What are tips and tricks tech coaches can be thinking about? We're going to continue the conversation around remote learning, not just today here, but also on Tackling Tech. So if you are unfamiliar with Tackling Tech, like I mentioned, Liz, who's in the audience, was a guest. We've had Eric, who's on the panel today. He's the latest episode. Go check it out. Tiara is going to drop a link in the comments, and that's going to give you an opportunity to plug in your email address and give you some instructions on how to subscribe, rate, and review Tackling Tech. We promise you we're not going to try to sell you Dyknow or anything. If you drop your email address in there, we already have it. You're here. But we're trying to give you an opportunity to enter a contest where we're going to give away a $500 Amazon gift card to some new subscriber on Tackling Tech. So we think this podcast is going to help you out in the audience. So we want to also do a little giveaway to make things exciting. So please follow that link or just get out your iPhone and subscribe, rate, and review Tackling Tech. That helps bring awareness to the podcast. That helps us out as we're in the early stages. Also, if you have ideas for episodes or want to be engaged even further, best place to do that is at Tackling Tech Pod on Twitter. That's at Tackling Tech Pod. We're very responsive. We'll get right back to you. But yeah, I'm really excited about the conversations that we're having on Tackling Tech. Tiara, do you want to start by introducing our panelists for today?
Yes. So good morning, everyone. Or I guess afternoon now. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to give a brief overview of our panelists today. We'll give them a chance to introduce themselves as well. But we have a great panel today. We've worked with everyone here in some capacity in the past. Sean Coffron, as Brett mentioned, we did a Tackling Tech episode with him a little bit ago. Sarah Margeson is a Dyknow customer at Tippecanoe School Corporation in Indiana, where we're also based. Really happy to have her here with us. Eric Guise, we also did a podcast episode with him recently. Great insight into remote learning on that episode. And then Melanie LeJeune, we've done a lot of work with her in the past as well. She's also a Dyknow customer. So we're really, I don't want to go too deep into you all because I want to give you all a chance to introduce yourselves, but we're really excited to have you all here with us. I think this is going to be a great discussion. We had a ton of questions submitted, so I think we're going to get some, really good tech coaching tips and tricks for remote learning today. So want to give a quick overview of the topics we'll be discussing in today's webinar. Like Brett mentioned, we had 300 questions submitted for today's discussion. Obviously, we can't cover all of those in an hour and a half. So what we did is kind of pick out the most important topics that we wanted to discuss today, which are transitioning to remote learning. We got a lot of questions about how to make that most effective, as well as remote learning best practices. So talking about, what does it look like in the early stages and what can you implement first to make this most effective as we transition into remote learning. Then we're going to talk about more tactical and strategical stuff, like remote learning coaching strategies and recommendations for success. So once you've made that transition, how can you implement strategies and tactics to be successful? Then we're going to go into some kind of real top concerns at the moment. Some of the biggest questions that we received were on security, privacy, assessment, and differentiation with remote learning. We'll also touch a little bit on digital equity and kind of the digital divide that we've seen with this remote learning in place. And then to wrap it all up, we're going to kind of talk about where do we go from here and what does this remote learning setting mean for K-12 education now, next semester, and maybe 5-10 years from now. So that's kind of the agenda for today's webinar. We received so many questions. We decided to continue this discussion next week, and we're going to be hosting a remote learning week. So this is going to consist of a week of breakout sessions. All of our panelists have been gracious enough to join us for another session next week. So this is the schedule for those sessions. Monday, we're going to be talking about digital equity and student engagement with Eric. Tuesday, we're going to be talking about communication, collaboration, and coaching tactics with Sean. Wednesday, teaching tactics for remote learning with Sarah. And then Thursday, what technology tools you can implement or that you're already using to be most successful with remote learning, and that will be with Melanie. So these will be afternoon sessions, about 45 minutes to an hour long, and they'll be using questions that we already received from everyone on these topics, as well as letting you all go ahead and submit new questions during those discussions. The one thing that we want to encourage you all to do in order to access these sessions is to join our Tech Coach Con Facebook community. So we're going to have this great week of remote learning, but we want to create a community where after this week of remote learning, you can have a community that's there for you to help answer any other questions that you have, to engage on new ideas and continue that conversation after we have these breakout sessions. So I'm going to push out the link in the chat to this Facebook community. And go ahead and request to join. We will have to approve you to be in the group, but if you join this Facebook community that we've created, this will be the only way to access those breakout sessions next week. So the Zoom links will be in here, and then all discussion from those sessions will also be in this community. We'll also be posting those recordings in the Facebook group after those sessions are over. So highly encourage you to go in there and join. I'll post the link in the chat in a few minutes once I'm done talking. And then, yeah, so we're really excited for this week of remote learning. Brett, anything you want to add on that?
Yes. So if you want to jump to the next slide, and then I promise we'll be done plugging stuff and we'll get into the conversation. But we did, in the spirit of having 300 questions, inevitably, you are going to get a lot of questions about Dyknow and the Dyknow product. And we did not want this to be about Dyknow and the Dyknow product, but we did want to create a forum for audience members to ask questions about Dyknow, how Dyknow can help with remote learning. And so Friday of Remote Learning Week, we're going to be hosting, this is unaffiliated with the Facebook group. We're just going to be hosting Dyknow office hours. We're going to bring in a customer to be determined. We're just going to talk about Dyknow, answer those questions that you have given us as audience members, and run through how we can help, how Dyknow might be able to help you with remote learning. We're so proud and honored. G2 used Dyknow in an article that they just posted about how to empower students with free remote learning software. We're giving away Dyknow from a trial perspective right now during this time, and we were listed on this article, so that was really great validation. So that's going to be an additional link we'll send out to everyone who's here. But if you are not a Dyknow user, or even if you are a Dyknow user and you've got questions about the product, that's going to be the session you're going to want to come to drill in to learn a little bit more. Tiara?
All right, so expectations for today. This live stream is being recorded, so just like the technology coaching conference, if you attended, we're recording this whole thing. If you can't attend for the whole hour and a half, no worries. We will provide this to you by the end of the day, so you can watch it on your own time if you want to watch it again even. We also highly encourage you to use the hashtag TechCoachCon. I'll put that in the chat so everyone can go back and see what it is, but this is the hashtag that we'll be using for all TechCoachCon events. For the Tech Coaching Conference that we had in March, we had a really, really great engagement and discussion on there. That's how Sean Coffron and Eric Guise came into our audience, actually. So we would love to hear all of your thoughts in that Twitter hashtag and kind of create that community there as well throughout the event today. You all are clearly aware that we have the Q&A and chat tool because you are all engaging with each other, which is awesome. So encourage you all to chat throughout the event. If you have specific questions for us or the panelists, put those in the Q&A, and we'll have some time afterwards to go through kind of any questions that are relevant that we didn't already cover.
Hey Tiara.
Yes.
We haven't talked about this, but because engagement has been high on the chat and you're going to be facilitating the conversation, if there are questions that are coming in about Dyknow or anything related, I can keep my eyes on that and answer them. So
appreciate that. Lastly, we will be providing everyone who attends live today a certificate of attendance so that you can provide that to your school or district to get considered for PD credit. And then if you are watching the recording and get through it, think you could get PD credit for this, excuse me, just go ahead and shoot me an email. That will be in the follow-up email with the recording, and we'd be happy to provide you with that certificate. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and we will get this conversation started. Hello, everyone. I hope you can all see us. These are our lovely panelists today. I'm going to go ahead and give you all the floor to introduce yourselves before we begin with the questions. Sarah, do you want to go ahead and start?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Margeson. I'm the coordinator of connected learning at the Tippecanoe School Corporation in Lafayette, Indiana. We are the school corporation surrounding Purdue University. I've been working in my role. I really do a lot of professional development from the technology department. I work with about 800 teachers and we've got 14,000 students. I've been working in my role for 5 years now. Before that, I was a high school math teacher and I have a master's in learning design and technology. So it's coming in very handy right now with all of this stuff going on.
Anyone, go ahead and introduce yourselves.
All right, my name is Sean Coffron. I live in Front Royal, Virginia, which is Western Virginia, and I serve Manassas City Public Schools. I was an English teacher and teacher of ESOL for 12 years before I shifted into a different role, and I worked as an administrator for several years, building and developing online curriculum and creating alternative pathways for students. I currently serve as a technology coach at our middle school, and I've been there for 4 or 5 years. And next year will be my 20th year in education, so I'm pretty excited about that. My research interests are specific to professional development and teacher evaluation and how we can improve self-efficacy of teachers and students using different personalized learning strategies. So one of the things that I'm very excited about is to chat more about how to use technology coaching, especially in our current situation, to make things better for kids.
All right, I'll hop in. My name's Eric Guise. I live in Pennsylvania, but I teach in New Jersey at Hopewell Valley Central High School. I was a biology teacher for about 12 years, taught biology, bioethics, biochemistry, and field ecology. And then I switched over to the media and tech specialist role. I think I made that transformation over to that position because I started I was one of the ones that piloted the one-to-one program in our school. Really loved the technology piece, started to integrate that, fell in love with technology. I went back to school to get my doctorate in digital transformation and education, and I'm using it every day right now. So I'm just happy to be here, happy to field some questions and expand the PLN.
Hi, I'm Melanie, and I am a librarian at St. Louis Catholic High School in Lake Charles, Louisiana. We have about 600 students. I'm also the technology coach, and we have a help desk in the library as well. And this is my 21st year of teaching. I've worked in elementary schools as well, and I'm just happy to be here to learn and share with you all.
Wonderful. So we're so excited to have you all here. Thank you for being here again. Going ahead and diving into these questions. So we'll start again with kind of that remote learning transition, best practices that you've seen so far. So first question is, how is the design for remote learning different than face-to-face or blended learning that you've seen so far? Eric, do you want to start us off with this question?
Yeah, sure. The design is different, but there are a lot of similarities to teaching in the classroom and using tech in the classroom. So really what we want to do here is we want to stick with what we're comfortable with. We want to, if we use Google Slides a lot in class, we want to stick with Google Slides. And what we want to do is use what we're comfortable with and find ways to expand that a little bit to our teachers or to our students and push that out. So really, when we're looking at the in-class piece versus the virtual piece, we have to lay out certain parameters. And I like to start every digital meeting or any type of assignment that I push out with some expectations, kind of like what you did here at the beginning of this virtual conference. Set the expectations, let the students know exactly what you expect from them, and then show them how you can support them in this space.
I'm going to chime in. I think communication is so key right now because, you know, and I've been telling my teachers this, we went from going 5 days a week and seeing the students for multiple hours a day to maybe getting them to read an email every now and then, or maybe getting them to see a video that we put out. So for me as somebody in technology, as well as for me as a parent, I have two sons that are going through all of this right now as students. Communication is so important, just constant. I know we have a lot of emails coming in, but to me, you can't really repeat yourself too many times in terms of setting expectations for students and checking in with them. It's just constant communication because all those hours that we had with them face to face are now gone, or they're transformed at least a little bit.
Yeah.
I agree. I think one of the important things to keep in mind is one of the things that we're having to replicate here in our remote setting is that relationship piece and setting clear expectations and making sure that there's a regular opportunity to meet with the students or the students to have a regular opportunity to meet with us really helps to solidify that and continue that relationship. Many students come to school not just to learn, but also to reach out and to get to know new people and also to have that relationship with their teacher and with the classmates. And I think it's very important that we continue that. And one of the ways to do that is to make sure that we're always available at the specific times. One thing to keep in mind also is if we're in a remote learning setting, one of the barriers of our time together is that we don't physically have a shared space. But on the other hand, having that ability to engage in personalized learning really puts it to the forefront, because we no longer have to worry about having, 30 or 50 or 55 kids in the classroom. Classroom management is not necessarily as much of a concern as it would be. And so we are really freeing ourselves up for trying new things and trying different opportunities.
Yeah, I agree with the communication piece. One thing we really stressed to our teachers was, remote learning should not look like your classroom. Learning in the classroom, and really being cognizant of the amount of time that it takes the students to do the work. We suggested that they do we meet 3 days a week typically in a normal time, but 3 30-minute lessons. So you're looking at an hour and a half of work a week. We also did a survey with our students and got a lot of feedback. So we're on spring break now, but we're about to begin week 4 next week. And week 4 is going to look different than week 1 because of the feedback they gave us. And one of the things they said was the emails were overwhelming. So we've kind of suggested to our teachers, if you are finding yourselves writing a lot of instruction, then maybe think about doing that in a video instead.
All great tips. I think the communication part is so important, especially for us. We've been trying to internally over communicate everything just so that people are all aware of what's happening and nothing gets lost in translation. This next question, we kind of already covered it with those answers, but anything to add? What transfers seamlessly from classroom to remote and what does not? Anyone can start us off. Sorry.
So one of the things I think is easy to continue is anything that you use technology for, or any sort of formative assessment that might be used digitally. One of the things that I use to help to structure my ability to transition what I'm doing in an analog setting or in a traditional setting to an online setting is the SAMR model. The extent to which we substitute curriculum or substitute materials, augment materials, modify materials, and then reinvent or redirect information in a different way. And this is a real good opportunity to explore our ability to use technology to create that extra learning space. But as mentioned before, one of the things that we want to be careful of is taking on new forms of technology or new resources don't necessarily have any experience with. One of the things teachers get very excited about, because we at heart are instructional designers and want to do what's best for our kids, is we go, oh, this is great. This is a great opportunity to do that one lesson that I never got a chance to do in class. I'm going to use these 3 technology tools. I'm going to blend them all together and make this great lesson. And the difficulty with that is, of course, you have device concerns. So what you're doing has to be device independent. In addition, you want to make sure that students aren't so caught up in the technology that they miss out on the meat of the lesson. And it's very important that students don't feel left behind or singled out due to device unavailability, the digital divide, or any sort of cognitive issues they may have. So it's important to, rather than going off and spinning in a new direction, to maintain a relatively simplistic technology platform, and to maybe do a little more than just substituting a traditional classroom for a digital classroom, but to avoid anything that might be extraneously difficult or complex.
Yeah, I really like what you said about that. I think one of the beautiful things of this time is that we really have learned to be more flexible and more forgiving. And so something that, transfers seamlessly, or the flips learning kind of things, like with Edpuzzle. But we had a teacher who wanted to do a Socratic seminar because they're reading Shakespeare right now. And, we are having virtual office hours with Google Meet, but not everyone can meet at a certain time. I mean, all of our learning is asynchronous. So, she either decided to scrap it or maybe use Flipgrid or try to figure out another alternative, because we do have to be mindful that some of our students are now taking care of younger siblings.
Yeah, I think what I would say, is able to continue from what they were doing in the classroom to remote learning is I don't want my teachers to ever lose their teaching style, like the thing that makes them unique. And so if I have a teacher that I know is super engaging with storytelling or just explains things better in person, then I might encourage them to use video more than sending an email message or posting something on their classroom. Like, use video, because as you can see right now, I'm a talker with my hands. So a lot of my messages to my teachers are over video, just because I know that I'm going to sound better and maybe more clear over video than I would if I were to try and put all of my thoughts into an email.
Yeah, this is all good stuff. One thing that I like to stress to the teachers from the tech coach standpoint is that this is the time, and I think Sean said this a little bit, to try new things. And what I mean by try new things, get Screencastify, Screencast-O-Matic, Loom, whatever program you want, and go. I'm a hand talker as well, but and go out there and shoot those 30-second to a minute videos for your students, just wishing them a good morning. Get the social emotional component into every single day. It takes 5 minutes to do that, and you can make them for the week if you want. The other thing, we mentioned formative assessment tools that we may use in the classroom, and I saw in the chat someone asked, like what? Quizzes, Quizlet, GimKit, Kahoot, they just upgraded to make them all kind of, they all do great things. And the best thing is it gives feedback to your students very, very quickly. For our expectations piece with these formative assessments, you've got to throw out the window that there's a possibility of them cheating to get the answers and things like that, because yeah, it's going to happen. So what I like to do a little bit, and this transfers from the classroom to the virtual classroom, is to get more of these creative formative assessments through maybe Google Docs or slides where they turn in something that it gets them engaged in the learning a little bit more than a Q&A. And I think we really need to focus on challenging ourselves as teachers to come up with these creative ways of doing that.
Eric, I like what you said about, kind of not stressing out so much over, are they going to cheat or not? A coworker and I actually, our instructional coach and I were talking about this very thing. And, we both came to the consensus that they're still looking it up. How many of us remember everything we ever learned from every class we ever had? I mean, we have the world at our fingertips, and if they're having to look it up, that's still a skill that is important.
I think reframing some of your questions too, right? Like in my opinion, at this point, if the AP exams can go to being taken at home, surely my curriculum can go to being learned at home, and I can still give some assessments, right? What kind of questions am I asking? Am I asking more analysis style questions where the students would actually have to come up with a constructive response? Or am I asking the same questions that they could Google?
I think this is really just transitioning ourselves more into a project-based learning method, or claims evidence reasoning, or case studies, these types of things, because just like formative assessment, it provides exposure to content. And that's really what we want them to do. We want them to gain the skills of how to get the knowledge. So sometimes the process is worth more than the content.
Right, that's kind of where I was going with that. If anyone's familiar with PBL Works, or what used to be the Buck Institute of Education, and their work with project-based learning, one of the things that I've been working with my colleagues at our school is talking more about how to make things more inquiry focused. We're trying not to introduce new information as much as we are trying to reinforce things that people already know, and also create new learning spaces for them to engage in the content. So I think PBL has a great opportunity here. And I encourage everyone to take a look at some of the work that Buck Institute has done. And the nice thing is you don't really have to create the wheel because it's already there. And really a lot of our work would be adapting what's available to our new situation or our different learning environments.
Those are all really great points. Sean, this next question kind of bridges off of what you were just talking about. I thought that this was one of the best questions that was submitted, and I would love for each of you to kind of touch on it both from a curriculum perspective and from a technology perspective. So what is the current mindset of the learning community during the COVID-19 school closures? Do we keep teaching new materials, or does this time provide more opportunities to return to the basics? So I'd love if you all could touch on that from materials in terms of curriculum, and then materials also in terms of technology tools.
So at our school division, one of the things that's exciting about our community is we get together quite a bit using Zoom and also using other platforms, including a learning management system. And we were just having a conversation about this last week. We were talking about how to make sure that every student has access to technology and how to frame that in a way that makes things easier for students, but also promotes equity among students. And so one of the things that we've been focusing on in terms of trends in getting the technology out there is we happen to be a one-to-one school. And so we set up a system where students could come and sign up for machines, and they go get the machines from the school, and they work from there. But if you're not in that situation, and if you don't have the benefit of a one-to-one school environment, I think it's very important that from a technology perspective, three things occur. And the first is that whatever lesson or whatever activity we're doing, it's device independent, and it doesn't necessarily require some sort of a download or a login. That could be something using Google or things of that nature. And if it does require a login like Google Drive or like your learning management system, that those credentials had already been created. So it doesn't require the students with their families to create something new or to do something that's a little more engaging, or a little more difficult to set up, because you don't want the technology to get in the way of learning. And regarding curriculum, I think it's important that we continue the same level of understanding and the same level of depth that we have in the classroom. So anything that can engage them in terms of critical thinking or higher order thinking is essential, because what the students need now, in my opinion, based on the work that I've done with some of the kids in our division, what the students really need now is to feel connected, but also feel engaged on a deeper level. I think gone are the days, for this school year anyway, where we can do work where it's just focusing on drill work and focusing on getting that information out there. If we have the time to do that in the classroom, that's wonderful. I never really found the time to do anything that wasn't more engaging, because our time is so limited as it is, and using PBL tends to be a little more efficient in nature. But what I have found now is even more so, because students don't really have all day to be on the computer. I mean, they do technically have all day, but they don't have the level of engagement to log in at 7:30 in the morning and stay until 2:30. And so the teachers now more than ever are pressed to create activities that are more inclusive, more interdisciplinary, and more engaging than ever before.
Yeah, one of the first things our principal talked to us about was we need to focus on essential skills. There are some classes that can spend more time reviewing, but of course, like our AP classes and classes like chemistry, our chemistry teacher really wanted to move forward. And he has done an amazing job with that. He uses PowerPoint recording to make his videos, and he can, we're fortunate, we're a one-to-one school and we have inking capabilities on our computers, and he embeds Microsoft Forms within that. It's kind of like Edpuzzle, but it's his own creation. And then of course we have Google Meets for students who need to have questions answered by the teacher, or they don't understand something. We also use OneNote. And OneNote it's a class notebook, and it allows the teacher to see the work of their students so they can follow up with them in that way. But I thought it was really great for our administrator, to say, really focus on the essential skills. We are certainly not going to be giving busy work. And I think as a teacher, I just feel like we're going to have so much growth, because we're going to really see what's important in our curriculum and maybe go deeper, rather than, oh, I need to cover so many chapters.
Sean, I think you touched on this a little bit with differentiation. I think whether it's technology or curriculum, differentiation right now. Like we're at a perfect spot to be sending out that kind of stuff to students. So differentiation could be actually differentiating the curriculum based on where your students are in their understanding, but also differentiating the technology based on what they have available to them. So our 6 through 12 students have Chromebooks at home that we sent home, but our K-5 students don't. Well, we also have mixed areas socioeconomically. So some of our students have technology at home and others don't. And so just being able to understand that you can do multiple representations of the same content, that you're differentiating based on the students' needs in the classroom as well as their interests. I think it's super important right now to be considering students individually, and because maybe you don't have to worry about the classroom management part of this, right? You might have a little more time to think about, well, what can I do to tailor this instruction a little better for the students that I have in my class? And hopefully some of that tailoring and that differentiation won't just be an individual student, it will be a group of students, right? But differentiation is going to be huge with technology and curriculum, and especially if we move into this potentially in the fall.
Yeah, so a lot of great points. Sean, earlier you mentioned the SAMR model, and our school uses something that uses SAMR but incorporates it into a matrix, and it's a technology integration matrix. So it has SAMR across the top and down the left side. It has 5 different learning environments, and then it gives an overview of what the teacher's role is, what the student's role is, and what the environment looks like. And one of the things that we always say is, don't let technology be the first focus of a lesson. Let it enhance curriculum, let it enhance the lesson. So we still encourage that. So we have Chromebooks to all of our students K through 12. And that took a big effort on our school district's part. I mean, they were running bus routes to drop off Chromebooks at some of the students that didn't have them. And that's how we also do our Chromebook repairs. But one of the things that we have to focus on here is outside of our school district, we have some neighboring school districts that do not have that technology. So how do we still get those students to learn? I know of a teacher that lives in my cul-de-sac that teaches at one of these districts. She's a 2nd grade teacher, and she's mailing out work to their students every day and trying to give them like 2-week chunks at a time. I think that's very valuable, and it's something that kind of gets overlooked, and she's a saint for doing that. Some of the other things that I kind of want to point out is that we're blessed that we're going into the 4th quarter of the year, because usually that's when our big projects happen anyway. But we do need to focus on some of the courses, such as the math courses, that next year is their big state test. They're still going to bring back that state test next year. So we still need to push forward in those content areas, but we can, highlight some certain things. And also we can communicate with the teachers that teach certain courses next year to maybe reinforce some of the stuff that we would teach at the end. So I didn't want to overlap with anyone's answer, so I kind of took it a little bit in a different direction there.
And I'll also step in and say, I dropped a link in the chat for a blog post we did that references the chart that Eric was talking about. So if you look in the chat, just go to that blog post, and that's what Eric was talking about.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it, but it's a really good point about the timing of this all happening is very kind of not perfect, but better than it could have been. So next question. In general, what are the remote learning expectations in your school for teachers and students each day? What is the recommended amount of time that students should be spending on remote learning per day? And how do you get teachers to consider the amount of time students are spending on devices while they're planning their lessons? Sarah, do you want to start with this one?
Sure. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we're a very large district. We have 19 schools, and Our K-5 buildings all look a little different, and our middle schools all look a little different. Our high schools look different. So I guess depending on who you talk to, you might get a different story. But what has been the theme, though, is that the building itself is all sort of on the same page. So that makes it easy for the parents then. So I'll speak from some of the stories that I've heard. And then as a parent, I'm a parent of a first grader. So my son, all across our district, we are on the same schedule as Melanie, where we're 3 days a week. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday are remote learning days, and then Tuesday, Thursday are waiver days. So those remote learning days, just depending on what the teacher wants to send out, information is sent out to them. For my own son, his teacher sends out activities that he could be doing in each of the subject areas, but they're not actually collecting grades at this point. They are asking students to still engage in some of the conversations or the curriculum, but they're not going to be grading any of the content over the 9 weeks. So that was the other kind of benefit, as Eric mentioned. We were 9 weeks into the semester, so Q3 grades were stored, right? Those were done before we actually were sent home. And so for our high schools, they are pretty much saying the same kind of thing, where you can't earn a lower grade than what you had for Q3 as long as you're participating in the content that is available to you. Our middle schools, they're working on more block schedules. So they've done a pretty good job of talking amongst their grade level teams to say, okay, I'm the 6th grade math teacher. This is what I'm sending out for my expectations this week. So let's make sure that I'm communicating with the 6th grade science teacher and the 6th grade English teacher so that we're all on the same page and we're not overloading the students with the amount of content. Now, the state of Indiana has come out with recommendations on how long they expect students to be engaging in content throughout the day. And I know for K-5, it's only 30 minutes. So that obviously is going to make a difference in what teachers are sending and what parents are receiving. But I have heard a lot of teachers, and even my own son, we're doing a lot more like sort of exploring the world around us kind of learning. And I know the FACS teachers have done an awesome job with that. I have a lot of friends who say their laundry is getting done and their refrigerator is getting cleaned out and they're getting home cooked meals from their teenagers. So I think people are getting creative in what sort of assignments they're expecting students to do. And it's not just sitting at a computer for 30 minutes.
We're expected the first 3 weeks to have at least 1 grade. So we're still doing grades. Now, I don't know if it will be the same when we go back, because we are a one-to-one school, and we have, all of these tools that are helping us meet with students, and for them to get help. They can even get technology help if they're having a computer issue remotely. So that's what we did the first 3 weeks, was at least 1 grade a week. And we had those first 3 weeks a faculty meeting through Teams every Wednesday. And then we had a department chair meeting before that. And then each department was required to meet with their people. So I think, Sarah had mentioned earlier the importance of communication. There's this constant communication. The other thing that we're doing that I think is really great is for those students who have fallen behind, our administrators in our counseling department are actually making phone calls, and they've split the student list. And because, the idea is that no child left behind. I mean, we are going to do everything that we can for them to be successful.
Yeah, so our schedule is a little different. We have a rotating drop schedule. So we have 8 possible classes, 3 classes before lunch, 1 is dropped, and then 3 classes after, and 1 is dropped. So now that we're in this situation, we're doing A day versus B day. So A day is all the morning classes, B day is all the afternoon classes, and they flip-flop back and forth. So from 9 to 1, they have a 1 hour time block that's allotted for each one of the classes. The teachers can use them however they want. Some do screencasts and do more of an asynchronous learning approach. Others do Google Meet, and we even have a couple that are taking Google Meet to the next level. They'll make a Google slide, and they'll have different groups, and they'll attach meeting codes to each one of those groups. And then they'll pop in to each one of the meetings. They'll record all the meetings so they can make sure classroom management wise everything's going well. But it allows them to break out in small groups and get some group interaction. So we do have a lot of that going on. We are also still grading at the high school. I know they had a virtual committee, hoping that, you know, by keeping the grades open, it would be easier transition to college, that relay of information. So that's something that you might want to consider there. But I mean, that's just kind of how we're doing it. I think everyone has brought out some interesting points here that I'm taking notes myself, making sure that, you know, we're thinking, you know, holistically on this.
So across the Commonwealth of Virginia, there are different mindsets regarding how to support students during this time. The governor came out with some specific guidelines and some directives that were shared with the public and then also shared with school divisions to guide them. I happen to live in a different division than I work, or we call school districts divisions here, so I apologize in advance, but I happen to live in a different district than I work, and the district that I live in is relatively small. So I've seen 3 different models based on what my students are doing in Manassas, what my own kids are doing here at home, and then also in the neighboring school district. One of the things to keep in mind is it's been encouraged across Virginia that students are not able to be penalized based on the work that they're doing. So, and that's, I think, to address the equity issue and also address the issue that we're all just here trying to support one another. But it's interesting that all 3 districts have taken different approaches. One, for example, has completely eliminated the 4th marking period, and we're operating on a trimester schedule, at least for this school year. So technically they're in 3rd marking period for the rest of the school year, and then they are going to continue working to make up some work if they can to improve their grade, but nothing will be penalized. And then the focus is on team-based approach of teachers working together to develop lessons that are on a regular basis. Another model is more individualized. They're using their learning management system, or in this case, their content management system, to support students in their growth and their learning. And they have specific times throughout the day where they are invited to meet with the teachers during office hours, but they have flexibility about when they can complete the assignments. So for example, my son could be working on his algebra assignment this morning, but then he can't meet with the teacher until the afternoon. So there's a little bit of flexibility, but they still have anchored office hours with which they can receive support. And then a third model is even more abstract or more differentiated, where students are given resources to use to explore and to learn a little bit more, but the structure is not really there for assessment, and the teachers are meeting more in a general way to check in with students and do some of that socio-emotional growth. The interesting thing about the model that's less structured is they seem to have focused more on socio-emotional development. And one thing that's very interesting to me is they have a whole section or a whole group of lessons on mindfulness and on appreciation of oneself and one's family. And so what you can end up doing is doing a lot more of those facts activities that were mentioned earlier, like, you know, cleaning the fridge and doing meals and things like that. But what's interesting about all this is across the Commonwealth, one of the things that the governor has mentioned and has been reiterated is we're all going to be in this same boat together. So we have standards of learning, and yes, our No Child Left Behind assessments are called SOL. It's been great since 1999. The jokes just fly around. But the interesting thing about the Virginia SOLs is, as in other states, they were canceled or they were postponed or not made to penalize anyone. But we're all in the same boat. So next year, the understanding is that next year everyone comes back to school with the same level of difficulty, because we all went with a very limited version of instruction for the last 9 weeks of the school year, or maybe even a little longer. And it'll be very interesting to see what is done as a Commonwealth or as a region to mitigate that and to help students to remain competitive. I know that some of the statewide or some of the national assessments, as was mentioned earlier, have been made more flexible. They have a lot of CBT that can be done at home now, which opens the door for a whole bunch of different interesting dynamics. But theoretically, we're going to go back to normal relatively soon. And so in the next 6 or 7 months, I'll be very interested to see which different states and jurisdictions come up with different plans for bringing students back into a traditional classroom setting, not necessarily just with academics, but also with attention span and with learning how to do school again, particularly with the younger grades.
Really great points. I love the idea that remote learning is not just sitting behind a computer, but you're in this whole new environment that gives you other learning opportunities outside of just the computer. One short wrap-up question for this section. If each of you could just kind of rapid fire your answer to this. So what has been your greatest challenge so far with this transition to remote learning, and how have you overcome it? Melanie, why don't we start with you?
The greatest challenge, I think, probably was for those teachers who didn't embrace the technology as much as others. There was a learning curve, but so there was a lot of one-on-one and continuous support with that. We have, we all have our different teacher personalities, and for a particular teacher, she found it hard to let go a little bit, and there's just the idea that she wouldn't be with her students instructing them. And so our instructional coach really worked with her, and now I feel like she's going to come back from this and will have grown so much, because she's she'll be able to embrace, her gifts and skills that she had before this, but with some extra strategies and tools in her pocket. So I think that was the biggest thing, is, just some of the teachers who were scared. And now I see teachers doing things that, Google Meets, for example. I mean, for whatever reason, our high school students and our high school teachers don't really like being on camera. You would think that our high school students don't mind because they're always on Snapchat or whatever, but they really don't. They want to hide themselves when it comes to classroom activities, on video. And so now I just see all of us, we're on, things like this all the time. And I think we've become a little bit less self-conscious. And the same with teachers learning some skills that will help them with the remote learning.
I think one of the most interesting and most challenging parts about this experience was the emerging dynamics when we first started out, because we were getting sometimes conflicting, but definitely different messages from, the federal government, and then from the state, and then there are different jurisdictions, different levels of understanding regarding the quarantine and regarding the different restrictions that would be in place. And so for the last 6 weeks, I'm sure everyone else has been in the same situation, but for the last 6 weeks, my greatest challenge has been to keep my colleagues and our stakeholders informed as the situation changes. Because there's a balance between keeping people too informed and then causing confusion, and of course not maintaining the level of transparency that would be expected in a state or local government setting as manifested through the schools. So getting the message out to parents and family members, and getting the message out to students about the new situation or the changes that are taking place really posed some challenges for us, especially with the digital divide, because some people were able to stay abreast of the situation with a little more ease, given that they had more access to technology. I think the exciting part about it is, though, now that we are more stable in our quarantine setting, at least until next couple of weeks when things start changing again, that we get a little bit of a break, and we've kind of set up a communications system, or communication platform, if you will, where we're going to make sure that we have a common message for everyone, and we are very regular with our updates, but also careful not to give conflicting or confusing messages across the Commonwealth, and then more in our local school systems. So I think that was the main concern, was communication. The interesting thing about that, and a benefit of that, was we've become very familiar with certain communication platforms, and so now teachers will have the opportunity to use those newfound insights when they're delivering information and lessons to their students.
think I'm going to agree with Melanie that my biggest challenge initially was the teachers that didn't listen, we'll call it, the last 5 years, and then are now feeling the need to listen. But I'm going to say personally, the biggest challenge has been we've got 2 educators trying to do remote learning at home, as well as 2 children, 5 and 7, trying to do remote learning at home. And so I keep that in the back of my mind as I'm talking to teachers, or if a teacher emails me at 10 o'clock at night when they normally wouldn't be emailing me, I might understand that it's because they were managing their children at home, and then finally got to that email whenever. So I think I'm maybe a little bit more flexible in when teachers can reach out to me and when I'm available, because I understand that they're not just trying to juggle how do I teach remotely, but also the stress of having family at home and how that dynamic is really working.
When I first heard the question, I would have probably leaned towards Melanie's answer, and then I kind of switched to Sarah's answer. But I'm going to take this to a third spot. Going last is difficult. It's like categories. You're scraping for answers here. Excuse me. But resource overload was definitely something at the beginning. There are so many amazing educators across, the world. And everyone's pushing out different ideas, and just basically getting everyone to say, okay, these are all great resources. Let's just get comfortable with the basics first. And I think that's what we had to do. And I think the administration at my school did a fantastic job at getting a needs assessment out there and getting us organized so we could just focus on some of the major players, have some type of a screencasting tool, have some type of a virtual meeting conference tool, have some way of pushing out assignments and collecting assignments and getting the communication out there. But I just want to take a second to just say, reflect back on this time, anytime between now and when we go back to school, and say, hey, teachers, you did an amazing job. You're adapting to a tough situation, and we're going to be better for it at the end. We're learning so much so quickly in the realm of technology that education is going to be better for this.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off of that and just say that one of the things that has been very exciting for me is seeing teachers and educators in general kind of stepping up and saying, yes, this is exactly where we should be doing with technology and where we should be. And I'm very excited about next year, because now teachers are becoming even more familiar with blended learning, and the conversation is changing. It's no longer a situation where they're saying, well, how do I use this resource, or how do I use that resource? We've gotten to the point now where, I mean, we do have a little bit of resource overload, but the interesting byproduct of that is you have educators making critical decisions, and classroom teachers being able to say, I really like this particular solution for addressing my students. And so next year, I'm excited about August and September, people hitting the ground running and saying, I know exactly what I want to do the first couple of weeks to use technology, not necessarily just to engage them and use a lot of bells and whistles to get the kids running, but really to engage in deeper learning and differentiation.
Yeah, I think that it's really awesome to see the confidence level of teachers grow. And like you kind of alluded to, not that, and I know Eric said this too, technology is meant to enhance the lesson, but I feel like our problem solving skills have increased, all of us. And so we'll be able to more critically assess, is there something technology wise that will help us with this, or is pen and paper fine? But I love seeing that confidence level grow. And something that I think this time has really shed a light on for my school in particular is we know, we've been talking about it all year, we really need to streamline some of our processes with technology, because we kind of have, you mentioned resource overload. Well, we kind of have technology tool overload. Like, our students in the survey, they have 8 teachers, because we have 8 periods, and, they all use different things. So we do have a learning management system, But we just need to look and assess, is that the learning management system we need to keep, or have some people abandoned it for something else? You know, and it's a delicate balance, letting teachers have autonomy in the classroom with tools, but also having some streamlining where it's not overwhelming for students and parents. So that's been an interesting piece from all of this.
Those are all really great pieces of it, information and advice. Brett, do you want to jump in before we go to the next section?
Yeah, so I've been loving the conversation. It's been awesome. I've also been paying attention to Twitter and have been laughing. Want to shout out Erica Rodriguez. Erica and I actually chatted a couple weeks ago, and she's a teacher in Texas, and she's going to be on the next episode of Tackling Tech on Tuesday. So look out for that. But it also was a reminder to use the Tech Coach Con hashtag. I'll say it again. I put this in the chat, but it got buried because there's such a great conversation in the chat. We'll do a giveaway on a tweet from anyone who uses Tech Coach Con. So definitely use it. We've got about 30 minutes left, and we'll pick someone out and follow up with you. But thank you for the interruption.
Yeah, so we have 30 minutes left, ton more questions to get to. So I'm going to ask you all, maybe 1 to 3 of you contributing for each question, just so that we can kind of get to all of the good ones. Obviously, if you have something great to say, don't hold back. So now getting more into kind of remote coaching strategies and recommendations. So first, to start us off, what are the biggest differences that you've noticed between coaching in person and coaching remotely? Eric, want to start us off?
This is a great question. I'm going to tell you this, Google Meet, any type of conferencing platform where you can share your screen has been absolutely a lifesaver. But there are other tools out there that I've used. IORAD, I don't know if anyone has heard of that, but IORAD is amazing. It's an extension. It allows you to videotape your screen, or it will take, every time you click, it will take a picture, and it'll allow you to use text in there too. And pushing these guides out to teachers. So the teachers, they have to be a little bit more independent because there are 4, 5, 6 tech coaches or people that are very well diverse in technology, and they understand it and how to implement it in our district. I'm probably leaving a couple out, but we all are meeting with some of our more tech uncomfortable crew. So when we're meeting with them, it's great that we're able to push out these guides to mass numbers of teachers and giving them a spot to do that. So for me, the biggest thing is being able to be multidimensional as a tech coach and push things out in person, well, through Google Meet in person, but also to create resources quicker, faster, and actually I think they're better than what we used to do, into spots where we can communicate where they're at and where teachers can go get them. So being more organized, being more resourceful, and being multidimensional.
Anyone else?
So I just wanted to piggyback on that and let you know that I think the key to coaching is relationship. And I think Eric touched on that a little bit. And so one of the things that I wanted to highlight is in my coaching sessions, one of the important things that I try to focus on is making sure that the teacher feels empowered. So the teacher feels that they're affirmed in their understandings of what they already know, and that they're heard in any questions, their concerns that they might have. And then the second part is to make sure that the teacher feels like there's still some sort of rapport or relationship there. The nice thing about using screen sharing applications and also applications where you can use video like this, where you can see each other face to face, is we still have the opportunity to use those semi-audits or those facial expressions to show people that we care about them, that they're more than just someone on the other end of the screen, or just someone who needs help with yet another technology tool. Rather, they're a person that's trying to give of themselves for the children in their care, and we're a part of that conversation because we're fortunate or blessed enough to be able to provide some extra insight. And I think that's an important aspect of coaching, especially when you're doing this digitally, because you don't have the benefit of having a shared space. You need to do a clearer or more consistent job of communicating that relationship and communicating that socio-emotional growth, even for another adult, because that builds that set of culture or set of teamwork in the new environment.
It's a great point with those relationship building tactics. Next question, which I think is really applicable to what you all said about your biggest challenge with this remote learning environment, but how can I help my less technology proficient teachers? What are the best strategies and resources available to me? Melanie, do you want to start?
Sure. We had the benefit of having an in-service. So we found out we were closing on a Friday and we had a scheduled in-service on the Monday. So basically what we did with our teachers that, we knew were not using as much technology is someone mentioned this earlier, we started with, what do you see your goals? What are the essential skills you need to, and what do you know how to use currently? So we started with that. And so, a lot of our teachers are familiar with PowerPoint. And so we knew, and they knew that they would need to record some lessons. So we taught them how to use the PowerPoint recording feature. So I think that was the biggest thing, is just asking them what they were already comfortable with, and maybe, having to just expand that a little bit. Some of our teachers, we all had to do a video of ourselves just so that our students could have that face-to-face piece the first week. And so, some teachers were only comfortable, everyone knows how to record themselves on their phone. And so we just, created instructions and helped them get that to a link that they could send out to their students and parents. So that's what we did.
We've been trying to keep up with constant communication with our teachers. So we've been hosting, before this week, it was daily webinars with them. And we've had a lot of teachers that normally are not super engaged in our typical face-to-face professional development that are starting to engage with those lessons via the webinar live or the recording. And so we're just seeing, I even had a teacher that actually emailed me and said, I didn't really listen when you talked about this last time because I didn't really think it was applicable to me, but now I really need this. So there's just some transparency in the conversations, and we're trying to keep our resources as updated as possible. Now, since we're in so many buildings, we're fairly used to trying to communicate things on a mass scale and maybe not face-to-face all the time. So we've just maybe upped our game a little bit in terms of how much we're providing, but our team was very comfortable with providing video resources or how-to documents, or even engaging with parents. So we've created a lot more parent guides, over the last 4 weeks than I ever had before, because maybe the teachers weren't expecting the students to do that work at home, but now they are. So the parents need some help with getting started on some of those tasks.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of Sarah, we actually have a remote learning hub on our website, and it has sections there's a parent section, there's a student section, there's a section with all of the updates from our administrator, because, emails get lost in the shuffle. So it's kind of that one-stop shop for everyone. And I think the department chair meetings, or the department meetings that I was talking about earlier, have really helped, because I like to empower our teachers to be coaches as well, because we have some awesome all-star teachers. And so, for example, with the science department chair was utilizing a strategy really well. And I just asked him, will you please share this with your department at your next department meeting? And then if there's an issue, they'll bring me back into the conversation. But that's a really great strategy too, is just empowering someone in that grade level or department.
The chat seems to be blowing up over those parent guides that you mentioned, Melanie. So I'm sure we'll be able to get people resources on those. I know, Sarah, you threw your email in there. Something to kind of piggyback off the next question, from the standpoint of a tech integration coach who was asking this question, how are you best providing professional development to your staff and teachers at this time? Sean, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to mention, so one of the things that we're doing is we're focusing on a structured approach to professional development. And there are 3 aspects to that. So of course, there's a big difference between training and PD. So one of the things that we're focusing on first and foremost, and we've been doing it for the past 2 weeks, is we've been focusing on training sessions for colleagues that focuses on different resources they can use. So for example, if there's a resource that we've had approved by administration, or there's something out there that we're going to use, that we can train them on the use of that utility. And that's done relatively structured, and so teachers can sign up for it using our professional learning management system. In addition, we also have professional development sessions, and those are more building based. I know for mine, they've been team based. So I might have the English 7 team meet with me, or the civics team meet, and I'll just sit on the meeting, so to speak. And those professional development sessions take us to the next level. So now we know how to use this resource, or how to use these 2 resources together. How can I use them to improve my practice? And so that type of professional development is a little bit of a different conversation. And it's more of a conversation about instructional strategies than technology. And it's interesting because although my role is as a technology training specialist, and I'm sure the rest of the panel would agree, a lot of what we're doing really is more about embedding technology in our instructional practice rather than just using technology in itself, because that's just the start of the conversation. The 3rd aspect is coaching, and I think that becomes very important later in the process. So once we've gone through the training mechanism and people know how to use something and they know why they would use it in terms of professional development, there's an opportunity for personal growth. There's an opportunity to develop a relationship with a colleague in that environment. So I can work with them in a coaching session and really take them to that next level. And that's the part that I enjoy the most, because what's interesting about coaching is the conversation becomes more about how that person is becoming more of a scholar practitioner, or thinking about why they do something rather than just going and doing it in the classroom. And that can scaffold into a conversation about not just instruction, but about their educational philosophy at large. And so you end up starting out with a conversation maybe about how to use Google Slides, or how to embed a video in Google Slides. And through that process and through that cycle, so to speak, later on we end up having a conversation about classroom engagement, and that can turn into a conversation about maybe their own personal opinion about the length of a video, or how to incorporate a video into a lesson in an effective way.
Yeah, a lot of great points there. I just want to add 2 things. First of all, our teachers are students too in this case, if we're the teacher. So we have to kind of tailor our presentations, or the way that we're handing out the content basically to their learning needs. A lot of, depending on their tech level, a lot of their learning needs can be met after a conversation. If they're more of a, I need you to help me through this, you might use Google Meet. Or I just need to see this, you might use Screencastify. Or, you know, I'm pretty independent, I'm just not sure, can I take one of your guides and then meet with you after that? So that's the first thing. And the second thing, and I won't go too much into this because it is in the last episode of Tackling Tech, we had a badge system. It's asynchronous professional development that we offered our teachers. And basically any technology that gets approved by our district, we create a badge for. And it allows teachers to go in there, they watch a little video, how it's used, what you might use it for. And it allows them to really plan how they would implement this into the classroom and then apply for a badge. And I think a system like this would be great, especially after all this is done. It's a lot to develop, but if you start small and you get bigger, I think this could take our practice in our tech coaching to the next level.
So great suggestions all around. So bridging into these kind of major concerns that people are having during this time, I want to start off with kind of the security and privacy issues that have been talked about. So kind of just key learnings on your all's end of kind of security and safety suggestions when using remote learning tools like Zoom, Google Meet, other video tools, or other engagement tools that you've kind of learned or your district has implemented. I guess, Sarah, do you want to start?
Sure, I have strong opinions about this topic. What I try to remind our teachers is that there are safeguards in place even prior to this remote learning, that student privacy and data privacy is a concern when the kids are in our classrooms or when they're at home, right? So we have tried to harp on our teachers and remind them that we have products that we purchase, that they are able to use, that we have already vetted, that we have already shared the appropriate student data with, and that, you know, they are available for our teachers and our students to use. So typically if a teacher comes to me and says, I found XYZ, or I get a free trial until June 30th of XYZ, we try to ask some pointed questions about, like, okay, well, what kind of information does it need about your students? Do you need to provide parent permission slips? What are you going to use this for? Do we have a similar tool to this? So just thinking about some of those questions. And honestly, these would be the exact same questions that we would ask them prior to all of this stuff. Because we don't want people going rogue and signing up for random accounts, and then it's data mining. For, you know what I mean? It's starting to collect information about our students that we really don't want it to collect. And that goes deep into, you know, any websites that we use, any Chrome extensions that we use. Obviously, our students are on Chromebooks, so they're not really installing any software, but with our teachers, not installing software on their laptops, things like that. We've been trying to push more information about student data privacy in the last year. So that's definitely, I mean, that's high priority, just asking teachers the right questions. And then just going as simple as, we have something called a no release list, which is basically the students cannot be photographed and sent to the media, or photographed and put on the website. So our teachers checking those things before they post a screenshot of their Google Meet with all their students, or before, you know, however they're going to be sharing what they're doing with their kids, that's great. But have you checked that no release list lately to know whether or not Johnny's mom said it's okay for you to do that?
Yeah, so we really do need to look at FERPA, COPA compliance for all this stuff. And one thing that we have to do is we have to come up with some type of system that's going to vet the process a little bit. But I just want to throw this out there. There have been several tools out there that some tech coaches, some teachers really love to use. And if they don't say FERPA COPA compliant in their privacy, they get thrown out immediately. But what you can do is contact those tools and ask them to really consider, for education, putting those in, because it's going to be a win-win. You're going to be able to get it passed, and they're going to get more customers. So if FERPA COPA is not there, we tend to just throw that out. But communicate, because that, I mean, if you look at Canva, I just put that one in the discussion. They just got a Canva for education. I'm pretty sure it's for that purpose of FERPA COPA compliance. Another big one is GimKit. GimKit last year in September, went through a big overhaul of their privacy, and now they're FERPA COPA compliant. So communication is key in that.
Great suggestions. And I know this will be an ongoing conversation as, you know, the length of remote learning gets drawn out for however long it does. Another big concern with remote learning is that the digital divide has kind of become more apparent than ever. What are some strategies or things that your districts have done to keep learning equitable with this large digital divide? The person who asked this question said they have students with devices and students without devices or internet access. So how do you kind of find the balance and make sure students are equitable as possible during this time? Sean, do you want to start?
Sure. So we are a one-to-one school, so we had access to the devices, but not necessarily the ability to give it to the students right away because of the changing situation. And we also wanted to make sure that we were making good use of our resources by preparing correctly. We sent out a survey, and the survey was sent out on our website, and also we used our robocall or our Blackboard Connect feature to send out the same message over phone. And the message was, we have devices that are available to you as a family. If you need a device, let us know via this survey. Of course, the irony is you needed a device to fill out the survey. So there were other ways for them to communicate back to us as well to let us know. And then once we had the data of who needed a device and who didn't need a device, the third category was people who had not gotten back to us. And so administration and a team of volunteer educators got together and called some of the families that weren't able to reach out to us, and we're a little proactive about it. We have a little over 45% students learning English as a second language, and so we also used some translation software for other languages, and we have some bilingual teachers who speak English and Spanish, so to make sure that we reached out to everyone. I just wanted to throw that in there because that's an additional concern. You want to make sure that everyone feels like they're a part of the group and no one feels ostracized. But anyway, so after we'd had those conversations over phone, or we gathered the information on the survey, we were able to determine who needed a device and who did not need a device. Now, in our situation, the next step was to set up a system for delivery or for distribution. And then people came and they picked up devices and they went on their merry way back to their house. And we did it in a very specific way to make sure that no one was contaminated or no one was in a situation where there were more than 10 people in a group at once, kind of like a drive-through system. If you're in a school that's not one-to-one, one way to mitigate that is to make sure, so we are not a Chromebook school division. We're a school division where everyone had a Dell laptop, but it's important also that our software or our resources, if we're using web-based resources, are device independent. And so it's crucial, I would say, that if you're going to promote an equitable system, that you use a platform that's going to be able to be seen on a mobile device, able to be seen on any device that you're going to use, and also able to be seen if someone has limited internet connectivity. So although it's really cool to use like video and audio and things of that nature, I think it's very important also to make sure that the instruction is available if someone is not able to access that audio or video. Obviously, if someone doesn't have access to a device, it provides an additional concern. But even if someone has a device, if they're in a location where Wi-Fi is not necessarily available or not necessarily reliable, then you want to have access to a lesson or a learning activity that doesn't require heavy bandwidth or heavy download, like a video or audio clip. We found that audio clips tend to be a little less cumbersome than video, and better than that is to have an alternative lesson where everything tends to be spelled out or tends to be on a document of sorts. And the last way to mitigate this in terms of what we've been doing is just to provide support. We find that most families have access to a phone of some type. It might be a landline or it might be a mobile device, and then teachers have office hours where they can reach out to where parents can reach out to them. And we also have a team of support, and I happen to be part of that team, where parents reach out to me and talk about, how they can get access to technology or how they can get some support if they don't have access to it.
Those are really good suggestions. Okay, so we had a few more questions in that area, but I'm going to cut it a little bit short so that we can get to our last questions and tackle any Q&A that we have without going too over on time here. So last few questions, just kind of about where do we go from here. So first, we had a tech coach reach out saying that she has people ready and willing to learn and try new stuff that they never had time for in the past. She's wondering, how do I maintain this momentum once we return to our normal face-to-face learning and keep teachers as engaged with technology? Sarah, do you want to start this one off?
Sure. I think honestly, the proof will be in the pudding, right? I think when the teachers come back in the fall and they're more comfortable with trying these things and they actually try them in their classroom, they might realize, wait, so all of this stuff that I, have been doing for remote learning still works in my classroom and my kids are engaged with it and stuff. I also think that we're going to have some kids that are going to come back and they're going to kind of expect some of these things to continue. My teacher was really, innovative with the way that they did their remote learning, and I want that stuff to stick around. I really liked that part of it. And I'm sure some of our teachers are having fun with some of the things that they can be doing during this remote learning. So why can't that stuff happen in the classroom, right? So hopefully you can keep the momentum just by tapping into those things that they got really excited about, or maybe that their kids really engaged with, and then see how you can translate that stuff into a traditional classroom setting. And honestly though, the way our district is talking right now, this may not be the only time that something like this happens, right? This is the first time this has happened, but it may not be the only time something like this has happened. So I think we could not have prepared to go into this, but if this happens again, we have a warning and we can prepare, right? We can begin to think about things a different way, just in case something like this ever happens again.
Yeah, we also can look at this at a smaller scale, and that's snow days. A lot of us have snow days. Well, guess what? Now we have e-learning. We know how to do it. Now maybe we could get that passed so our graduation date doesn't get pushed into July. We had one year we were pretty close to July. So that's something there. But as far as the return to school, I'm going to go sciencey here. Punctuated equilibrium. So the last 5 weeks we've had to get up to speed very quickly with this technology practice. I think when we get back, we can expect a little bit of a level off, but once everyone gets back in the swing of things, tech coaches, look out, because we're going to be going up and we're going to get more creative. We're going to have student podcasting in there. We're going to have YouTube channels being made, things like that. And I think it's going to be a very exciting time for education.
Yeah, I think two things that I thought of while both Sarah and Eric were talking. One is that in our survey that we did with the students, we asked them to give a shout out to a teacher or to give something, some success that they felt during the first week of remote learning. And it was incredible. And then this survey was available to all of the teachers. So they got to see all of those shout outs, and pretty much everybody got a shout out. It was really great. But I think that, like Sarah was saying, will be momentum. But then I was thinking, I hadn't really thought about that question, but it seems like we should have some kind of, conversation, some kind of fun way to kind of decompress and see what worked, what was successful, what would we do differently, like Eric said, for the next time. Here in Louisiana, we have hurricanes, and I was very impressed with my daughter as a freshman in college in New Orleans, and they had been working on kind of a disaster plan for a year. So they were ready to go when this all happened. And, I started thinking like that's something we really need to do as well. Although I think, it's been beautiful to see everything come together, and we're moving right along, and we've learned some things. But I just thought, our whole mind, there's a mindset shift for sure.
Yeah, and I think one of the exciting things about the coming months is I'm very interested to see how the response will be from a societal level. I know on social media, there's a lot of joking and chiding going on about now parents know what it's like to teach their kids, and it'll be interesting to see if there's a little more empathy for educators. But more germane to our conversation is I think there will also be a conversation about the equity of resources for a lot of school divisions. I mean, some school divisions, some school districts, it was pretty seamless. They just went home, everyone took their computer home, their Chromebook home, and they continued working. While there are other divisions that had a serious struggle because they don't have the amount of resources or the amount of financial abilities, and they really didn't have that ability to send machines home with students and then just continue with education. So one of the things that I hopefully we'll see and that we'll be able to look forward to is a greater understanding of the need for digital equity in our schools across the nation, because that way, if something like this were to happen, not necessarily that computers would replace that teachable moment or replace that the most important resource in the classroom, which of course would be the teacher, but that there's a greater opportunity for people to do a shift of resources so that every child has the opportunity to benefit from a blended learning setting.
I think those are all great points. None of us really know how it'll shift once we go back to normal, but I think definitely some really good learning that we've all gotten from this experience. So we had to cut it a little bit short in terms of the questions that we had, but that is why we are having our remote learning breakout sessions next week, where we can dive deeper into each of the topics that we covered. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen again as we wrap this up, just so that we can show you all those resources that we're going to have for you next week and get you all connected with that. So is that showing up?
There we go.
All right, my internet has been a little tricky during this remote work process. Brett, I'll let you go ahead and wrap this all up.
Yeah, so just to recap from the top on things that we were talking about for anyone who joined. Tackling Tech, there's a link that was in the chat, but we're giving away a $500 gift card to Amazon for any new subscriber. So subscribe, rate, and review. You'll be entered to win that. Having a lot of fun with that podcast. Have definitely enjoyed that, like I enjoyed today. Tech Coach Con Facebook community. During this session, I approved a lot of people that I'm assuming heard about it in this conversation. So there's a lot of new members in that group. I encourage you, introduce yourself, engage with others, ask questions, help other people out. That's what this community is for. It's for continuing this conversation in between these digital events. And then finally, more information to come, but anybody who attended today's session who's interested in learning more about Dyknow, the product, and how Dyknow can help your school or your district during remote learning and after, that's what we're doing that session on Friday for. So this was awesome. I took so many notes and have so many thoughts on just future content ideas and topics. Tiara, I'm sure you're in the same boat as me. Any closing remarks from you, Tiara?
Yeah, I just want to jump in and say thank you to all of our panelists for being here. We really appreciate your contribution and wish you all the best in this remote learning time. Look forward to those sessions with you all next week as well. I think those are going to be really great. One thing for everyone who's attending, we will send you all an email with the recording from today, as well as that certificate and information on the Facebook page, those follow-up breakout sessions and the Dyknow Summit. Those will all be coming to you today so that you can have the weekend to watch these. Don't take your weekend to watch it though if you don't need to.
Don't do it at all. Yeah. No Dyknow, no digital. Get on the couch and watch Netflix. Any of the sports fans out there, the Jordan Last Dance documents on Sunday. So I'm glued into that. I'm sure a lot of you out there are. So relax and don't worry about work. Right, Tiara? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly. But if you find yourself with some free time, you'll have the recording before the weekend. So expect that today. And once again, thank you all for joining us today. We hope you can all join us for the breakout sessions next week. They'll be great. And thank you to all of our panelists for being here. We really enjoyed having you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.